Welcome, everyone. My name is Chris Gregory, Global Account Director with LOGISTAR Solutions, and I will be your host today. First and foremost, thank you very much for your participation in today's webinar. Today's presentation is part 5 of our ongoing webinar series focused on SAP's warehouse management and extended warehouse management solutions. Today's webinar topic is implementing extended warehouse management in a production environment. For those of you who have missed any of our previous webinars, they are all available for download on our website at www.logi-star.com. Our next scheduled webinar, which is hosted by ASUG, which topic is Building a Business Case for EWM. This is scheduled for August 15th at noon Eastern Standard Time. A quick few housekeeping items before we begin. During the presentation, please submit any questions via the chat feature within your online view, and we will try to respond to as many questions as possible at the end of the presentation. If for some reason we do not get to your question due to the lack of time, please feel free to send an email to mfiore@logi-star.com. We will also provide a copy of the webinar and the slide presentation to anyone that has pre-registered for the webinar. In addition to your questions, you will also receive an email survey on today's presentation. We sincerely appreciate your feedback since it does have a direct impact on the content for future webinars. Okay, so let's begin. Kyle, if you can go to the next slide, which will talk a little bit about our agenda for today. At a high level, I will provide a brief overview of LOGISTAR Solutions, and then I'll hand over the presentation to Kyle Sorensen, Director of SAP Solutions for LOGISTAR. Once Kyle is complete with his presentation, we will open up the floor for your questions as time permits. Today's presentation should last approximately 1 hour. As you can see in the agenda, after I provide the overview of LOGISTAR, Kyle will provide a bit overview of the integration between EWM and PP and TI, an overview of production staging options in EWM, use of control cycles, and finally an EWM and production demo, and then we'll open up the floor for Q&A. Kyle, we can go to that next slide. I want to provide a quick overview of LOGISTAR Solutions. LOGISTAR is a certified SAP consulting partner focused exclusively on SAP supply chain management. We are a specialized consulting firm with the deepest experience in North America in SAP EWM and WM. This expertise is validated by both our customers as well as our strong partnership with SAP, as we have a variety of exclusive partner designations, including SAP Premier Partner, Certified Services Partner, as well as an RDS Partner. We have successfully partnered with a wide variety of customers across the globe in various industry verticals in all sizes and shapes, representing some of the most complex distribution environments. Next slide. Since warehouse management is our strategic and primary focus, our core products and services center around SAP WM and EWM. If you look at the slide moving from the top left, we utilize native SAP technologies for wireless mobile data collection, or barcoding via radio frequency. Our RF transactions are delivered using SAP Console or ITS Mobile. As an extension to these services, to enable voice picking, we also provide a capability called LogiVoice, which allows us to layer in a voice engine to enable multimodal automatic data collection transactions. Moving to the top right, specific to transportation management, we also can provide a native small parcel LTL shipping product called XPS. This certified SAP product is already compliant with all the major global parcel carriers such as FedEx, UPS, DHL, Bax Global, as well as many regional and LTL carriers, to name a few. The key feature of XPS is that it resides completely within your SAP landscape, provides complete visibility across your supply chain for all small parcel activities. XPS is also available in all 3 SAP platforms, including ECC, EWM, and TM, and is designed to be a complementary solution to SAP Transportation Management. Looking at the bottom left, tied into our warehouse management solution specifically around EWM, we do have expertise around some of the advanced functionality and reporting capabilities, including labor management, analytics, and various KPIs. Finally, on the bottom right, since we can act as a turnkey solutions provider, many times we are asked by our clients to be involved from initial project inception through design and implementation, training, and go live. This strategic approach allows us to compare and identify the best fit for your environment, as well as consider both distribution and production environments. We can then enable our clients to develop a clear supply chain strategic roadmap moving forward into the future. Okay, that was a little bit about LOGISTAR. Again, we very much appreciate your time today. I'm now going to turn the presentation over to Kyle Sorensen, Director of SAP Solutions.
Great, thank you, Chris. Welcome, everybody. Good afternoon. So we're going to go through EWM and the production integration capabilities that it has. So I want to start with just a brief overview, and then we'll get into the demo. So to start off, standard integration does exist between Extended Warehouse Management and the PPPI module within ERP, so Production Planning or Process Industry. That integration's been there since SAP released Extended Warehouse Management 5.1, so back in early, roughly 2008, 2007. So what happened there was they were able to, you could receive from production, but there was a gap that existed and you could not issue. So you couldn't stage or issue components into production. So you could only do receiving. With the release of EWM 7.0, right around in 2009, that's where SAP did release the functionality to do staging as well. So I can issue components, whether that's raw material or WIP, back into production, and then go ahead and do the receiving as well at the back end of that. So full integration now, really between Extended Warehouse Management and production. This is hopefully everybody can see this chart okay, a high-level process flow of what we're going to walk through today and the way that the standard integration production works between ERP and EWM. So on the left, you would start an ERP like you normally would with creating a production order. You'd have your BOMs, your routings, recipes if you're using process industry. All that stuff is all set up just as you'd be operating today. You would still have to release the order, same process today. You would then execute the staging. So if you're familiar with ERP warehouse management and its integration into production, it's still really the same steps as far as triggering the component staging. Because you're dealing with EWM, with that integration, once the staging's been executed, it ultimately creates an outbound delivery from ERP. That outbound delivery then is transmitted over to EWM, where it becomes a posting change request. That posting change request gets converted automatically via a PPF action, and that gets converted into a posting change. Or it could be an outbound delivery order. It depends on the model, the production model that is set up, and we're going to talk about those models in a second here. So the key note here is that once you've executed staging ERP, an outbound delivery will get sent over to EWM. That delivery or posting change, you'll be able to create your tasks off of that posting change document. Those tasks ultimately are just saying, they're executing a picking strategy, for example, leveraging FIFO or FIFO, whatever kind of strategies you've got, going to the warehouse locations, and basically moving the stock to a PSA or a production supply area. That movement is really, within the four walls of the warehouse, is really more of a bin-to-bin movement. But the confirmation of that movement ultimately triggers what looks to ERP as a storage location to storage location movement. It doesn't have to be, between two separate storage locations. It could be just an internal movement from the same S-lope to to itself. But ultimately, what the flow is really showing is the ability for that movement in EWM to say, hey, I've staged. It is sending a confirmation back to ERP to say the staging's been done as well. So then production occurs, and when production is completed, you would trigger a production confirmation. Again, multiple transactions exist in ERP for the confirmation itself. So really, the process that you use today to do confirmations really shouldn't change. The output, though, of that confirmation is what we really want to point out here. So when you do the production confirmation, ERP will again trigger an outbound delivery to do the consumption, or that could be a backflush, it could be a direct issue, but it's going to consume those components out of the PSA, the production supply area in EWM. At the same time, it can be configured as well to go ahead and create an inbound delivery out of ERP. That inbound delivery is ultimately your receipt of either your finished good or your WIP material, depending on what stage you are in the process. And then that ERP inbound delivery will get converted to an inbound delivery in EWM that can be referenced, create tasks, go ahead and put her away, etc. Upon confirmation of those tasks, again, it can trigger the post-goods receipt back in ERP for the production receipt. So this is really the process that I'm going to be going through today, and the demo actually will cover all these steps as well. So hopefully this will match very well with what you're going to see in the demo. From a production staging integration perspective, it's really executed via an object that I referred to earlier called a PSA, a production staging area. That staging area really is just an area where raw material or other WIP components are brought before they're introduced into manufacturing. So it could be one area, it could be multiple areas within your production facility. But ultimately, so it really just depends on the design of your layout, how much room you've got for these areas. In a lot of other industries that that I've worked with, I see often used a PSA area could be right in front of each production line, or it could be you might have one production area that feeds many production lines. So it really just depends on the staging mechanisms that we would use, and I'm going to be covering those in a second. The other point too is there are multiple ways to deploy these organizational models of how you can do this production staging between ERP and EWM. We're going to go into those. There's four different models that exist, and again, a lot of it depends on the way you're physically laid out and the kind of visibility that you want between EWM and your production process. So we'll go into the first model here, and what this diagram is really trying to show is within extended warehouse management, you have your normal racking locations. If I'm going to pick to stage materials to a PSA, I'm moving it from the warehouse into the PSA area. From an ERP perspective, the PSA is actually seen in ERP as a storage location. So the first model is really saying, hey, let's represent anything that's going into production staging within ERP and within EWM. In EWM, it'll be warehouse managed, but it'll be also seen in a PSA. But in ERP, we're going to see that stock at the SLOC level. The other SLOCs down here, there could be one or many. These are all just warehouse related only, not really related to just production. So this is really the first kind of staging model, and it's really more for, again, the visibility of seeing what's in production in ERP. The next model, and this is the model that you're going to actually see during the demo, we tend to like using this model just because of the simplicity of the design. So for example, what's happening here is, again, I have my warehouse controlled bins, the warehouse controlled PSA staging bins, and then in ERP I just have one storage location. That represents everything that's being controlled in EWM. So from an ERP perspective, the difference here, though, is you're not going to see the goods systematically really getting transferred. From an ERP perspective, you're not going to really see those goods in a PSA kind of storage location. It's not. Ultimately, what's happening in EWM is just a bin-to-bin movement, and really there's no stock movement being done in ERP. We haven't issued anything, we haven't received anything, and we haven't transferred anything between locations because there's only the one. So, but what this does is, again, it gives you, from the warehouse control perspective, it's a little bit more of a simplistic design, a little bit less organizational data to maintain, and it very well may be the way that you're already set up in your system today. But it's just good to understand that you have these different models depending on how you're laid out. Let's go to the next model here, and that's saying here I'm going to still do my staging, but from an ERP perspective, I'm not going to manage that production supply area in EWM. So in ERP, it's still a storage location. In EWM, it's still defined as a PSA, but they're only like a goods issue or like a store, a staging area. They're not true bins in EWM. So there's still a pick, a transfer over to that staging, but ultimately that's goods issued out to an outbound delivery over to ERP. So really what this is doing is giving, if you have the option of not wanting to actually, EWM manage the PSA areas, you have that option as well. And the last staging strategy is using two separate EWM-defined warehouses. So here again, you've got a warehouse that's maybe just storing your raw material or WIP components, and then you have another building, another facility, still wanted warehouse controlled, and that's just storing your production goods. So those are being tied over into ERP as well. So all the warehouse stuff tied to a storage location, one or multiple, and then again your production staging area warehouse being tied to a storage location in ERP. So you can kind of see here through these four different models, it really just depends on how you're laid out today. We've worked with a lot of clients that have, they may have a physical separation between the warehouse staging and the production area. So they want this controlled with two different, systematic warehouse numbers and doing transfers between. Some have the production facility, under the same building as the warehouse storage. So to them, it maybe didn't make sense to have that as two separate warehouse controlled areas. Now let's talk about the staging strategies. If you're familiar with ERP staging with warehouse management, it had four different staging options. Those exact same four staging options are available with EWM. So SAP never took a step back as far as giving you the flexibility to do staging with EWM. So you still have the ability to do release order parts, and that is more of a strategy where it will allow multiple releases over time. So you might have a production or process order that runs, days, weeks, just depends. And you can't stage everything that's needed to execute on that order at just one time. You need to do it in stages. So that's what release order parts is good for. Also, it gives you the ability to stage for multiple orders at the same time. So I almost look at release order parts as kind of like a wave, almost like a wave pick to be able to stage materials to multiple production orders. The next strategy you have is pick parts. That's what I kind of view as the classic old school bill of materials. This is exactly what's needed for my order. Let's go pick those components and stage them. It's not picking for multiple orders, it's just picking for that one order. You then have another capability called crate parts, and those are really, they're needed in production, they're used all the time. They tend not to be on the bill of materials because they're used so frequently. So things like water, nuts and bolts, just commonly used parts can fall into a crate parts strategy. And then last is Kanban, and it's really Kanban is really the same thing as a crate part, but it's just a way to visually manage the process. So these production staging options, again, you can use one or multiple. You could use all these different staging options as part of your design, but they're essentially assigned to a control cycle. And we'll talk about the control cycle in just a little bit here. So now we talk about, we've got these PSAs, these production supply areas that we've defined. Again, one or multiple that can be defined within my facility. These are set up and defined in ERP. They have to be up in ERP, but they also need to be in EWM. So they are considered a master data object, a master data element. So what EWM is provides you a mechanism to replicate those areas over. That's what you're seeing on the left-hand side of the screen here. So it's a program that's within EWM that you can execute if you already have PSAs in use today. So I can replicate those over, and they will be then defined in Extended Warehouse Management. If you don't replicate them, you can still set them up manually. And these are what the two, the slides on the right, the screens on the right are trying to show. So I can define the production supply area, and then I assign it or map it into EWM. And that would be the process of actually setting up and defining the production supply area. The next step that has to be done is you actually have to define those bins, the production supply bins. So again, we're looking at those the 4 different models. This was the area in blue. Within that area in blue, you had those little areas in white. Those are the actual production supply bins, and that's what you're creating here. One or multiple bins can be defined inside of the PSA. So that's, again, a master data element. Looks just like a normal bin within Extended Warehouse Management. And then last, you make an assignment between the production supply area and the product, and telling it which storage bin within the PSA that's assigned to. There is another table that's not being seen here, where you can just make the assignment of PSA to the PSA storage bin to the PSA and not have to define each and every product. So it really just depends on how you're setting up your environment. So now I talked earlier about a control cycle, and again, this is an ERP. It's not EWM, but it's an ERP element. So if you have ERP, WM, and PP integration today, then you're using control cycles already. And control cycles are ultimately is what tells SAP what kind of strategy you plan on, what kind of staging strategy that you plan on using for a particular item. So by material, I can define what kind of staging strategy I want. So in this case, I've got these glass bottles. I want to stage them to my PSA, my production supply area, using staging strategy 1, which is just a pick list item. So just reading off what's on the BOM, that's how I want to stage to my PSA for that item. I may have a completely different material that I want to do release order parts for. So you have the option in here to by material to set what kind of staging option you want. So this way, once the material is released in production from the PPPI module, it understands what kind of staging strategy you're going to execute because of this control cycle record. So now let's get into the meat of the demo, really, because we've kind of talked about all the concepts. Now we're going to try and tie this all together. So what you're seeing here, I'll try and be very clear on when I'm in ERP or when I'm in EWM, just so you can follow along. So what we have here is, this is ERP. We have a process order that we've created for this material, this BEV 1002. It is a finished good. We're going to make one, just for example, we're going to make one case, which is 24 inches of this product. Just to show you what the components or the bill of materials looks like, we have 2 components defined. One is a clear glass bottle, and one is a label. So to make the 24, we need 24 of each of these. I'm also showing in this example that we're going to use, we're going to be doing back flushing. So back flushing is activated on these components. You're going to see back flushing. So the next step, again, I'm still in ERP, is you'd still have to release the order by pressing the green release flag when this thing is ready to be produced. And then similarly, you would still go to the top. You would go to a function called WM execute WM staging. So again, if you're familiar with the way ERP WM works and stages, it's the exact same process still. You're still going through and saying, execute staging, or again, if you wanted to simulate what's going to happen, you could have went through simulation. But if I say execute, ultimately what's going to happen is it's going to take the requirement quantity, in this example that was on my BOM, and say it's going to go out to the PSA, it's going to look at how much stock is already in the PSA, and it's going to execute and stage the amount that's needed to fill the requirement. So in this case, in this example, my PSA was completely empty. I had nothing in there. So when I executed to fill this requirement of 24 for both materials, it went ahead and it staged 24 for both materials. So if we go all the way back to that process flow diagram, you'll remember that once I did that staging process, it automatically would have created an outbound delivery to EWM. That outbound delivery can still be seen in ERP, and that's what you're seeing here through VL060. You're going to see basically a delivery getting created with 2 line items on it, and it's getting staged for the requirement quantity that we'd asked for. Now again, if we were doing, for example, release order parts and we were staging multiple times, you're going to see multiple deliveries getting created. Okay, but you can track all that. You'll have all that visibility even at the ERP level right now. And then just for purposes of showing you the status, again, you can still see nothing's happened. The goods movement hasn't been posted on this. It's still open. Even my materials, nothing's been done yet. So I'm just looking at this from an ERP perspective. Okay, now I'm down in EWM. So what I'm trying to show here is, again, based on that production supply area. Remember, I didn't have a separate PSA. I have one storage location that represents all of my warehouse and all of my production staging. But what happens is it went ahead and it created a posting change request. Okay, so that request comes down. It's actually tagged with the delivery number that ERP had created, and it's telling you that it's for production supply. So it knows, so it basically has all the same requirements, the 24 eaches of both materials for those 2 line items coming down. Now, based on, this is kind of hard to see, but these are actually 2 separate screenshots. This first one's just a little screenshot. What I was trying to show you is, again, that posting change request in standard was automatically converted to an actual posting change through the use of a PPF action. So this PPF action was set here. It's default SAP. Standard is going to do this. If you didn't want the request or the posting change getting created automatically, you'd actually have to deactivate this PPF action, which is, again, very simple, but just to show, everything that you're seeing here through this whole demo today is all standard SAP. Nothing enhanced has been done. So once that posting change request was converted to an actual posting change through this PPF, that's what you're seeing here on the bottom. Okay, so it looks identical still, but it's just a posting change. So what EWM did was just went ahead and assigned it an internal document number to represent the posting change. But again, through reference documents, I can still see the chain of events, the whole history of what's happened here. Now, there's a couple different ways we can process this, but for the purposes of the demo here, I'm going to the warehouse monitor, and I'm going under posting change items, and I'm going to pull up either a single or a range, or it could have been a list, multiple production or process orders, to go ahead and find out if there's posting changes needed. And you can see by keying in that that process order number, it did pull up the two line items that were on that posting change. So the next step would be to go ahead and create the warehouse tasks to go do the staging. Now again, the actual warehouse task creation itself could have been done, that could have been automated again through a PPF action. But for the purposes of the demo, I'm showing this as a manual warehouse task creation. So back on that posting change, this is what I was mentioning before, previously. I can go to the Reference Documents tab, and I can still see that this outbound delivery from ERP is for, for production supply, and it's tying to this posting change. So you still have that link. So now, when I went to my posting change here and went to go ahead and do my warehouse task creation, I went ahead and again, I'm creating these in the foreground so you see what's happening. So it's creating these as two separate lines. So the first line I've created for 24, it's ran out to a bin here using a strategy. It could have been FIFO or FIFO, just depends on what you had set up. And it said, hey, go stage this material from this bin and go bring it to this PSA. And again, I would have selected this, the next line, said create, and it would have given me another line item showing me, okay, for this particular material, go to this source bin, and again, based on your staging strategy, stage it to this PSA as well. So it's the posting change, the warehouse task creation from that posting change. You're seeing it being done manually here. Again, it could have been automatic, but the end result is that you're going to get two, in this example, two warehouse tasks created to do that staging. Now here, what you're seeing across the top are the staging tasks actually be confirmed, but using the RF. You could have done this, you could have printed out a paper confirmation sheet. The confirmations could have been done automatic. I mean, there's a couple different methods, but we're showing you the RF processing for this. So the users would have been logged into an RF queue on their device. We've seen this done a lot where they'll have a queue called production, and literally that's all these people do all day is they're bringing materials over to stage for production. So what the first screen they would have seen was, operator, please drive, to this location. They would have scanned the location to confirm they're there. In this case, there's some other information you're seeing here, like what kind of handling unit or license plate to go and take from stock, what product I'm looking for, and I'm looking for these glass bottles. Now, what you're seeing, and even here's the batch number that I'm wanting as well. But what you're seeing here is it's saying one case. Well, remember, one case was 24 eaches. So based on the way that we're storing this product, its warehouse management unit of measure is case, and that's where you're seeing one case. And then the next pick would have shown, go to this location. In this case, it's non-HU managed. It's not even batch managed. It's just a glass bottle. And again, they want 24 eaches of this. So both of this stuff was being picked onto a common license plate or a common, empty pallet to go bring it over to the staging area. This is all configurable. You don't have to use what we're referring to here as a pick HU. But ultimately, the final destination screen is going to look like this, and that's going to say that you need to drop off all your materials now over at your staging area. And then what I'm showing here is a screenshot of these products actually being dropped. They're actually in the production supply area with 24 eaches for both products, and they're even sitting on a license plate right now in the production supply area. Again, you don't have to use license plates. That's just what this example was showing. By doing that movement and doing the confirmation of that warehouse task, it automatically closed the posting change, set it to completed, both at the item level and at the header level, and it would have automatically triggered. Remember, I said it would have done basically, it looks like an SLOC to SLOC, automatically triggered a 411 over to ERP. That's what you're seeing down here, the lower left. is the material document list. So you're seeing the 411 for both my my glass bottle and my labels, and you're just seeing a a negative and a positive. It's just a movement. This is really because I'm using just the one storage location setup, is why it looks probably a little awkward. It's moving out of the storage location and back into the same storage location. If you would have been on the using two different storage locations, then you would have seen the 411 being reflected across two different storage location numbers. Also, I'm just showing for reference purposes in ERP that outbound delivery document that was sent, and that it automatically got set to status of completed, and you can see the 411 movements came through. So again, all this happened automatic just based on confirming those tasks over to the PSA within EWM. So now, production's running. We're making stuff, whether it's finished good or WIP. That really doesn't matter at this point. Ultimately, what happens though is you're going to come to a point of needing to do a confirmation. And again, I'm just showing one way to do a production confirmation. So I'm setting this for a final confirm on my finished good for all 24 eaches, which is the one case. And again, remember I had my configuration set to do a backflush. So, and it's going to be an automatic goods receipt. So what you're seeing here on the next screen is once I said, so let me back up here, once I would have said save on this confirmation, I can go through the history of my confirmation and look at and see what happened here. So you can see for these are my component materials, the two bottom lines, that got an outbound delivery sent from ERP, getting sent over to EWM. That's what's going to do the consumption, the 261 goods issue. And then you can see since I had automatic goods receipt, my finished good product is getting an inbound delivery, which is going to get transmitted over to EWM to do the receipt of the finished good. So since that backflush was automatic, the only way I could really show the result of it was to show this PSA bin and show that my stock is not in here anymore. It's the wrong product. This is a different material completely. So, I was using products GB100 and GBL110, and they're gone. So that's just showing that the backflush is automatically just taking the goods out of the PSA area, which is a good thing. We also said that outbound delivery, because it had been sent from ERP, it had automatically taken the goods out. It's automatically closed. It closes itself, because we did the backflush. So everything's showing, the line items are showing as completed, the header is showing as completed, and again, going back to ERP and looking at it, the outbound delivery, here it shows my 261s getting done, and again, overall delivery status is completed. Now we mentioned that the finished good triggered an inbound delivery. And that's what you're seeing here. So an inbound delivery was created. This is just showing that inbound delivery for 24 eaches. Nothing's been done to it yet. It automatically pushed it down to EWM, distributed it, and you can see here goods receipt. Nothing's been done yet with this. And you still have a full reference history if you click on the reference documents tab on the inbound delivery to see exactly what's going on. So you see this is an EWM on the bottom here. So you have the reference history back to your ERP document, and you also have the production order reference on this document as well. So a very similar process would occur where my tasks then would need to be created to go ahead and create my put away tasks to receive the finished good in. Again, these tasks could have been automatically created, and then we just have to go through the confirmation. In this case, I'm creating them manually and saying create or create and save, and it's showing, hey, you're receiving this stuff in, and you're putting it in to a storage bin based on put away strategies. And then last, I'm confirming the task. So in this case, it's coming in through some kind of door in my facility. I'm confirming the source as a door, showing the product that's coming in. It is one case. This was a batch managed good as well. And the destination then is going to show the bin location to put it into. And again, in this case, I'm using license plates or handling units in storage. So it's also created a license plate for storage. Once, and this was on the RF. So once that confirmation was done, if I went back to the inbound delivery in EWM, you'll see the goods receipt was now completed. Now that inbound delivery, even though the internal inbound delivery number is 6305, you can see here how I pulled it up. I pulled it up by production order. So I did my receipt by production order, is what you're seeing here. So that confirmation that triggered the completion, the PGR, post goods receipt, sends back a message automatically back to ERP, and it sets the inbound delivery to completed. You'll see my inbound, my 101 movement type, and the line item will be completed as well. So that's really the core process that we've went through from issuing the components to receipt and discussing the different staging strategies. So hopefully you guys walk away today with at least an understanding of the production process, how these staging options are available, the use of control cycles, and really how this whole how the whole integration works. Because we thought this webinar was important for folks doing manufacturing operations, because we tend to get lost in thinking EWM is just a four walls warehouse control and that's it. And you tend to get lost in just distribution, but it can obviously accommodate manufacturing and production environments as well, and that's really why we wanted to do this webinar. So I will now open it up for Q&A. I know Chris has been monitoring questions that have been coming in. Chris, do we have anything?
Yep, we do, Kyle. I'll start with a few questions, and again, as Mary Angela had said on the chat feature, please feel free to submit any of your questions for the Q&A session. We've gotten a few during your presentation. I'll start off. Either you or I can handle these. The first one I think is probably more for you. The question is, and I'll paraphrase it here, can we use a combination of staging strategies, or are we limited to one?
Yeah, so absolutely. You can, again, those staging strategies are like pick parts, release order parts, crate parts, Kanban, and again, it's really because it's assigned at the material. You can use a combination of those strategies.
Okay, here's another one for you. Are all of the same staging strategies available in EWM, regardless of whether I'm using process orders or production orders?
Yeah, absolutely. And I can actually show you guys. In EWM, you tend to see they're using the term, you'll see the term production. So production order, so right here's a good example. But absolutely, in fact, this demo that was done, this is actually a process order. So the PI module in ERP was being used. So even though it's being referenced in EWM as production order, it's production order or process order. So it can handle both with no problem.
Okay, great. Next question is, what is the difference between pick parts and release order parts staging?
Yeah, so we talked about it. Pick parts was really, picking based off a bill of materials, just what's needed for a bill of materials. They're only really intended to go to one order, whereas release order parts are you can actually stage for multiple orders, and you can stage multiple times. So you can, for example, if I needed 3,000 pounds of sugar, for example, and my staging area couldn't hold 3,000 pounds. It might be too much or something like that. Or maybe a better example, like 30,000 pounds, and I can only hold maybe like 6,000 pounds in there. I could release that order 5 times and stage, in 6,000 or 5,000, pound increments. So it helps manage the capacity out to the production line. So that's really the difference between the two.
Okay. Here's another one. Can the posting change be automated to create the warehouse task automatically?
Yep. So the way I had showed it, the posting change was the posting change was created automatically from the posting change request, but the actual task creation, the way I had shown it, was being manually created. But absolutely, you could have another PPF action, which stands for Post Processing Framework, and that can actually create the warehouse task automatically for the posting change. So you don't have to have somebody literally in there babysitting, creating pick tasks to go do the staging. The system can automatically create the tasks as these posting changes hit the EWM system. So you literally can have people just, running in system guided mode on their RF and just literally doing picks. The only reason you'd really want to maybe not automate the warehouse task creation process is if you're trying to kind of feed work out to the shop floor, if that makes sense, feed work to the warehouse, because maybe you're dropping so much that they're going to be overwhelmed. That might be a good reason to release tasks in a more manual fashion than using a PPF action.
Okay. Speaking of options, there's another question here. Is there a recommended production staging integration option?
That's a good question. Not really. It's really more dependent on how your physical layout of the facility is, and again, what kind of visibility. A lot of it comes down to visibility, what's required. A lot of times you have production saying, hey, I want to know, from SAP, I want to see what's in production right now in the staging. Other times, well, here's another good point too, because again, just based on how EWM is typically deployed, meaning it's sitting on its own server, so it's a separate logon, right? So if I'm dealing in production, I'm actually the production person. If you're working in that kind of decentralized landscape, then I would have to log into 2 systems really to see what is in production. Well, if you have it as a separate storage location defined in ERP, then you can access everything that you need to know in ERP still and not have to have the login for EWM. So a lot of it, it's really more of a blueprinting discussion. They can all meet your requirements. I'm pretty confident that there's not any problems there. It's just a matter of what's going to work best for you and what do your personnel require for visibility.
And you may have already answered this, Kyle, but the follow-on question to that one was someone asked specifically, which staging integration strategy is most commonly used in a consumer product environment, like a consumer product manufacturing environment?
Yeah, I've seen a lot that are using release order parts and pick parts, probably more so. It just depends on what the consumer product is. If it's something that, and it depends on how long these production runs run for. It can actually be all over the board as far as with strategies, but commonly, and I've done quite a few CPG and then pharma life cycle or life sciences implementations. They tend to be pick parts and release order parts.
Okay. Moving away from production staging, here's a different question around batch characteristics. The question is, it's pretty specific, but can you send the batch characteristics from a production order release instead of the actual batches to EWM? And can you talk a little bit, any kind of follow-on question to that? Can you explain some of our experiences around batch characteristics, transmission to EWM?
That's a good question. So I think what they're getting at is they don't want to create maybe they don't want to create the batch number in ERP, but they want to send like the characteristics and have EWM create the batch number. And I believe that's possible. because I know that the batch characteristics, they do come through to EWM. So whatever batch is in ERP, for example, is in EWM. And I know that you can create a batch and initiate the batch creation in EWM as well. So I think it's possible, because I think what, even though we're saying that you're initiating the creation of the batch in EWM, what you're not seeing is because of the integration between ERP and EWM, what's actually happening is I'm saying, hey, I'm creating this batch in EWM. It's actually firing a QRFC call back to ERP, creating the batch, with the batch master, and then coming back down to EWM again and saying, what's next? Keep coming. So I hopefully I answered that question to their satisfaction.
Sure, sure. Okay, let's move over a little bit to serial numbers. Here's a question. I use serial numbers that I have to track on my produced product. How is this handled within EWM?
Another good question. Let me see if I know on one of my RF screens. Yeah, here's a good example. Okay, so number one, EWM can track serial numbers at the bin level. So this is a change. It's an improvement over ERP warehouse management, where you couldn't see serial numbers really at the bin level. You had to have them nested within a handling unit or do some other kind of workaround typically to see a serial number. So it's actually a separate field, a separate entity in EWM now. The second point on that is it's all about what level of visibility you want. So you could have the serial number be reported and captured into EWM, but then maybe you don't want to see it at the bin level. Maybe you just want to capture it, maybe on inbound, or you might only want to capture it on outbound to know what you've shipped, and that's it. So it really depends, and it's really all that is controlled based on the serial number profile of the material master. So on that profile, you determine what kind of level of visibility you need. But what I was trying to show on this RF, for example, when I'm going to do my put away, you see this little field that says SN. That is for serial number capture. So if this product happened to have been a serial number required product, and I wanted to capture that on inbound receiving, I would have had to capture the serial number in this field. So hopefully that'll again, it's really driven off the serial number profile on the material master, but one of the other big key takeaways is that the serial number visibility is at the bin level in EWM.
Okay. Running up against some time limitations, just time for a few more questions. Here's one relatively specific. This one is on, the question is, please describe component shortages and COGI usage.
I don't know. I mean, I know that I've heard of the COGI before. I'm not sure if they're referring to, what do you do if you're short on components? So, for example, like I know if it's, when you do the production release, if let's say there was you needed 30 units to be staged, and you only had 10 in stock. A lot of it depends on rules. So do I want to just stage the 10, or don't do any staging because I don't have enough to finish? I need all of it. I could stage just what's needed, and then when more stock comes in, I can release again, and it'll read the PSA. It'll see that you still haven't staged everything complete for this order, and it will restage again. Just for what's needed. It won't overstage unless you're manually forcing it to overstage.
Okay, great. So this is actually more of a general question. I'll give you a break, Kyle. I think I can answer this one. The question is, really two-part question is, number one, how many EWM customers are live? And second is, can you describe a little bit about LOGISTAR's experience within EWM? So I'll tackle that one. EWM is a product now with a significant increase in the number of live install customers over the past 12 to 18 months. Currently, again, this is on a global basis, there's over 100 clients representing 200 sites globally that are all running EWM in various states. The clients represent all industries and also very baseline operations to very complex operations. LOGISTAR specifically has been involved with over 25 EWM projects, primarily based in North America, but certainly we have supported clients in Europe and the Asia-Pac regions, anywhere from baseline logistics assessments to prototypes to complete implementations. So certainly a significant amount of experience within EWM. Really, folks, at this time, it's really probably the last question we can take at this point. We're really running to the top of the hour. Again, on behalf of myself and Kyle Sorensen, really appreciate your time today. As Kyle's putting up here, there are 4 other webinars that we have conducted over the past 6 to 8 months, all available for download on our website. In addition, there is an upcoming webinar which is hosted by ASUG on building a business case for EWM that will be held on Thursday, August 15th at noon Eastern Standard Time. Certainly you could go to the ASUG website, or you can contact Michael Fiore at the email address presented. In addition, all participants that have been on this webinar today will receive a copy of the webinar recording as well as a copy of the presentation. Again, we appreciate your time and attention today and look forward to speaking with you soon.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
This concludes our presentation.